bring forth the merchandise.
Hi there! Oh boy!
Your spice. For our hard-working slaves, I brought you a sample.
Let's think.
Okay, pal.
For those of you who don't know/remember, Solo, a Star Wars story, released in theaters earlier this year. And for once I say that unironically, because for the first time in Star Wars history, some of you actually might not know/remember that. On this channel I always try to keep a gentle touch and avoid drilling into stuff too harshly. But to be honest, with this movie there really is no sugarcoating things. Solo is a flop. Solo is a fiasco. Solo is a failure. A failure of the most massive proportions. To be fair, some people did like Solo, other people did even love Solo, and that's great, good for them. But overall, the response to this film really wasn't anything to write home about. The response wasn't terrible, but at the same time it wasn't too great either, just kind of strangely non-existent. When you check the box office numbers, pieces start to fall in place. I mean, just look at this number right here. What is that? Funny thing, take the number you see up on screen and run it through a basic code breaker, you'll get a single word result that most effectively describes Solo and what it represents. Interesting. On the other hand, I guess you could say that this movie did become a significant part of modern film history, because now we officially live in a world where a proper live-action Star Wars film has made less money worldwide than Sex and the City and The Matrix Revolutions. And this is why we're here today, boys and girls. To analyze Solo, a Star Wars story, and figure out why it became such a forgotten failure and made Disney pull the emergency brake on all other spin-off movies. Why exactly was Solo performing so low at the box office and in the hearts of its audiences? Thank you. I'm here tonight. Before we move on to Solo, I want to quickly touch on one external factor that had a clear effect on its failure. That factor being Rian Johnson's most recent Star Wars film, Fanbase Divider 1.0. It should be no secret to anyone by this point that The Last Jedi is the most divisive SW film ever made. No matter what you say about it, no matter what you even think of saying about it, someone, somewhere is gonna get pissed off. But regardless of personal opinions, the fact remains that a big amount of audiences weren't too happy with episode 8. They weren't too happy with Disney, they weren't too happy with Johnson, they weren't too happy with Kathleen Kennedy. And they made it very, very clear, which is their right. So, when Disney heard all this backlash, criticism and boycott threats, how did they react? Did they take it seriously and respect their audience's worries and opinions? Of course not. They doubled down and instead of pushing things back, they released yet another Star Wars film only a few months after the last one, something which had never been done before. And here's the result. Turns out when people said The Last Jedi left a bad taste in their mouth and that they're growing tired of new Star Wars movies, they weren't just talking out of their rear ends, they meant it. It's this overconfidence and at some level even arrogance shown by Disney that I think played a major part in Solo's downfall. A downfall that has already forced the CEO himself to come out and say that they've put the franchise in a slowdown. It'll be interesting to see how the company reacts going further and if they'll be more inclined to listen to the audience. Time will tell. But hey, it's not all negative. At least the biggest Disney and Kathleen Kennedy criticizers now get to say, "I told you so."
Kathleen Kennedy, you are going
Damn
to
it!
go.
I'm never gonna hear the end of this.
Gravity applies in space.
Who's that?
Marauders, pirates, come to snake the score from under us.
How the fuck did she do this? Why didn't she just crash
So much rain. That's my body.
It can be argued that Solo is the film where Disney's franchise mentality shows its first strongest weaknesses. Now, some audiences always felt that a Han Solo origin story to begin with was unnecessary, and I understand that point of view. But at the same time, the character is such a memorable presence when first met in A New Hope, so it could be an interesting story to see. What exactly happened to Han Solo that made him transform into the man he is? In that sense, Solo is an interesting movie. The problem is this transformation never happens, at least not fully. Han Solo starts off as a good guy and by the end credits ends up being pretty much just the same, a good guy. So then, where's the change? Where's the transformation? Where's the Han Solo we know from episode 4? I'll tell you where he is. He's 2 movies away. Instead of taking Han Solo's character arc and telling it through one efficient film, the Mouse House machine apparently planned to drag it out into a full trilogy. And this trilogy-based approach is what ultimately ends up making Alden Ehrenreich's take on Solo so bland and uninteresting, because we never truly see him evolve.
Still don't get it, do you, kid? It was never about you.
You know what your problem is? You think everybody's like you.
Not you, kid. You're nothing like me. I hope you're still paying attention because now I'm going to tell you the most important...
Solo, a Star Wars story, never gives us Han Solo's transformation. It only gives us half of his transformation, or better, 1/3 of his transformation. And in a smaller scale movie focusing only on one character, that just isn't very exciting to see. Even more, it's downright unrewarding, and it's what makes this film feel only 1/3 of a real Star Wars film. So, Mr. Mickey, if I may, if you plan to give us more single character-driven origin stories, don't drag and chop those origins into 3 parts. Because 1, that's not how single character origin stories work, and 2, there's really no need to drag things out to begin with. At this point you have pretty much an infinite galaxy of stories and characters to pick and choose from. It's not like you're going to run out of material anytime soon.
Yeah?
Are you alright?
I'm fine. Go, Web, go!
In my opinion, a film rarely works when its villain doesn't. And this villain problem is something that Solo sadly does suffer from. Not in a traditional sense though, not in a sense that its villain isn't good. Solo's villain problem is that there is no proper villain at all. Now, before you comment, yes, Solo, a Star Wars story, does feature a bad guy. 3 bad guys, in fact. But none of those 3 bad guys are what you'd call proper villains. Why, you ask? Because none of them are villains for Han Solo, even though it's his movie. First up, there's Crimson Dawn, who it turns out is just irrelevant bait for the rest of the trilogy, so him we can dismiss right away. Secondly, we have Enfys Nest. And to be fair, Enfys Nest does serve as an antagonistic force during the movie, but it's not enough. He shows up only once at the start, and that's about it. Enfys Nest is never a personal bad guy for Han Solo. I mean, Solo doesn't have any clue as to who he even is, much like the audience. Furthermore, at the end it's revealed that Enfys Nest is neither bad or a guy, so again, never mind. The closest thing to a proper villain we get is with Dryden Vos. He is an external threat, and even though Han Solo doesn't know him, we do get some sense of an internal personal rivalry with him as well through Qi'Ra. Dryden Vos holds Qi'Ra as a slave, which means that he and Solo are destined to clash against each other for her at some point. But of course, they never do. They do fight, yeah, but just for whatever, not explicitly for Qi'Ra's freedom. Which means that Dryden Vos ultimately ends up being just another impersonal bad guy, just like Enfys Nest. We see him a couple times and we battle him once. The film does initially imply Solo's intentions of freeing Qi'Ra from Dryden Vos, and to be fair, there are elements of that subplot left in the final product. It just never goes full in on it. Solo talks and daydreams about getting Qi'Ra free, but an actual strategy or preconceived way to accomplish it is never clearly established. Maybe doing that originally was the plan, maybe that's the stuff that got cut out, hard to say. But it doesn't matter anyway. Audiences can only judge a movie by what it is, not by what it could have been.
Everybody stand back!
What's that supposed to be?
This is a thermal detonator that I just armed.
That's a rock.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. And you just made a clicking sound with your mouth.
Please tell me this isn't your plan.
No, this is.
One possible way to fix this lack of nemesis problem would have been to somehow implement Dryden Vos into the beginning of the film. Instead of just a big worm, make him be the leader or a part-time leader of the slum house Solo and Qi'Ra lived in. That way Solo would have already had a personal connection with Dryden Vos instead of just randomly bumping into him along the journey. Plus, that way the whole scene of meeting Qi'Ra out of nowhere would have been a bit more believable. Also, for the sake of clarity, if you're going to give all your bad guys weird fantasy names, maybe use more than just one exact same variation of syllables. Please.
Who's that?
Enfys Nest!
Who's that?
Dryden Vos.
Who's that?
Crimson Dawn!
Who's that?
Skinny p***s.
To remain fair, Solo's biggest issue isn't that it's a terrible or a particularly bad movie, because it's not. Solo's biggest issue is that it isn't special. It's the type of film you watch once and then forget. And in a larger-than-life franchise like Star Wars, unspecial and forgettable are the absolute worst qualities a movie can have. Say what you want about The Last Jedi, at least you remember it. Pretty much everything you see in Solo, you've already seen in another Star Wars film. And I don't even mean the older ones with that, I mean just the new Disney ones. The poor but industrious survivor from a crappy planet, Han and Chewie, the Falcon, the British lead actress, the snarky droid, the alien bar, the alien spy tailing the heroes in that alien bar, and so on. Aside from maybe Lando, Solo, A Star Wars Story really has nothing to add to the franchise. Maybe that's harsh to say, but truth usually is the harshest.
Well, have you got somewhere to be?
Yeah, back here, as soon as I can.
But I have to get home.
Jakku?
Back to Jakku! Why does everyone want to go back to Jakku? This guy is nuts. No one goes back to Corellia.
In many ways, Solo really is Disney's very own Justice League, without a mustache controversy. It's a movie that started with good intentions but ultimately lost its way after director shakeups and hasty reshoots. And just like with Justice League, the result is a heartless, very standard Hollywood movie made by a corporation to meet a release date, instead of a dedicated person working on their own clear vision. Maybe not with as bad results as Justice League, but a heartless Hollywood movie nonetheless. So far, Disney has relied very heavily on nostalgia to sell these movies, which is also evident in Solo. But it's been 3 years and 4 films since The Force Awakens now, and simply put, that nostalgia just isn't there anymore. Not the way it was back in 2015. Oh, that's the Kessel Run? Oh, that's how the Falcon lost its nose? Oh, big shot gangster putting together a crew? None of those things matter, at least not enough to warrant their own movie. You can sprinkle nostalgia on top of your film, but you can't have nostalgia be the core aspect your film is built around. In the long run, I believe that Solo flopping so badly will turn out to be a good thing for Disney and Star Wars fans. Because now it is clear to everyone that you can no longer sell these movies only on name and nostalgia alone. If Disney wants people to actually show up, they're gonna have to put real care, effort, and most of all, heart into them. Which again is great for everyone. Because Star Wars really is a franchise that's meant to be special. It's not meant to be okay. it's not meant to be standard, it's not meant to be a failure. Thank you, I'm here all night.
He's attractive, too. Sophisticated with impeccable taste and charisma.
There's the rub, right? How was I supposed to know she was an Imperial spy? I thought she loved me.
That's the guy, huh?
Who are your people?
I don't have people. I'm alone.
Solo.
Which reminds me, I think that the four of us should have a name. Because we're a team now, and there's four of us, so we should come up with a name for it.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Hey, I got us a real sweet deal here. We do this one job with them, we make some real money, and then we're free.
Alright, dearest viewers, let me know your thoughts on Solo. Would you say it's fair to call this movie a failure? And if so, what do you think are the reasons for it? Comment below. Thanks for watching.